that when we think about the shoulders that all women stand on, their mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers, women were conditioned very much so to fitting in and belonging, and not take up too much space and look pretty, don't say anything. For survival, women had to, quote, fit in and belong to the tribe, or they would literally be left to starve and die. The fear of not being liked. Men have that too. But for women, that can be really, really high. Is, am I liked? Am I approved of, included? I don't want to ruffle feathers. And so even if you weren't raised in the most affirmed home of being a female or being a woman, you absolutely can make a choice in this moment to say, I'm going to choose to develop the habits of self-confidence. But it's not like, your eye color or your height, you're born with, you have it or you don't have it. There's certain thought patterns and there's certain actions and habits that you can be reinforcing that will strengthen that confidence. Women I'm coaching, when they do this the first time, some laugh and giggle, some feel nothing, many of them will cry. They have been in front of a mirror every day of their life, doing their makeup, putting on this red lipstick, or doing their hair.
Welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. I am so fired up that you guys are here. And our conversation, it's one of those ones heading in, you're like, this is going to change your life. This one's going to impact you at a high level. And I know that because I know the guest, and I know the conversation, and I know kind of how she shows up and delivers. So I'm so excited for you guys to meet Tiffany Peterson. So if you're a woman listening to this, your life is about to elevate at a really high level. Tiffany has a way to speak to women and to help women to unlock things that have been holding them back and challenges they've been facing and maybe self-worth or lack of confidence, whatever it might be. If you're a man, listen, lean in on this one, because all of the women in your life, and I'm a product of great women, all the women in your life need you to give them the tools and the permission to be their best self. And Tiffany is truly a master at this. So Tiffany and I met years ago. It's so interesting. I used to watch her from afar, and she would be doing events, and she'd be training and mentoring teams and leading organizations, and both personally and professionally. And when I finally met her, I was like, she just is one of those people that shows up with a kind of what I'd call a high vibe. She's a high vibe person, but her vibe is like a massive amounts of sincerity and massive amounts of like human connection, like where you kind of get past the fluff into like, I really care, kind of human connection. But the other thing about Tiffany is she has this interesting way of like having massive empathy and like I care and I can deeply connect with you. And, I'm going to call you on your stuff and we're going to move forward and we're going to like be strong. It's just really interesting, intersection of those emotions. And she and I have done a lot of work together. It's funny, we were in a magazine article years ago. There's this magazine that each month would have kind of like a his side, her side type thing, and been on her podcast. Her podcast, the Tiffany Peterson podcast, is one of the top 1% podcasts in the world. That's all, by the way, one you're going to definitely want to check out, the Tiffany Peterson podcast. And she just is doing a lot of great work and serving people at a really high level. So Tiffany, I am so fired up for this. I'm so grateful you come on and share and pour your heart into people and show your insights, where it's not just like not just heady stuff. It's practical stuff. It's the action steps that we need to go to the next level. So, man, thank you for being here. I am so excited to have you.
Oh my goodness, friend, it's always a joy to co-create with you. Yes, we were advice columnists together, you guys, and we had photos like back to back, and it was so fun. And we would do that magazine. And similar, as I've known Justin a long time, and both people in our network kept saying we needed to know one another, right? And so I knew of him as well. And when we finally started connecting 10 plus years ago, I mean, this is like a decade ago or so, just all the goodness you've done. And thank you for the value you add to my life and to my community and just who you are in the world. Like, everyone needs more Justin Prince in their life. And I love your new book. My community has loved that. And I have loved that book. I even endorsed it, you guys. I'm on the back cover. I'm not even tucked in the book. I'm on the cover on the back of endorsing this book because it really is so rich. So it's a joy to be with you. And yes, what we're going to talk about today are principles, and they apply to men and women. I do spend most of my coaching time and deep development time with fellow women in entrepreneurship, personal development, self-confidence, self-worth, and helping them make money doing the things they love to do. But again, what we talk about today is universal. But I do think there's some unique things that women face or navigate that we can definitely go deep onto.
tell us who were you in high school, right? If we met
Oh
you at
God.
16, 17, 18, tell us who you were. Like describe Tiffany Peterson, the 17-year-old.
Oh my God, goodness. Well, I am a natural redhead, so I had this red hair, and I didn't really truthfully start loving being a redhead until my late teens, early 20s. Growing up in Utah, I wanted to be blonde hair, blue-eyed. And so when I think about my 17-year-old self is similar to what I sometimes call my eighth grade self, maybe a little more confidence at 17 than eighth grade, but definitely I think about she was zesty and bright and fun and, this bright red hair and this tiny little stickly body. Like I didn't break 100 pounds just until my senior year in high school,
Hmm.
right? So I was this tiny stick. And some people, you just judged me. You're like, well, tough problem, broad, right? But as you can relate to, and especially women, like if you had straight hair, you wanted curly. If you were too tall, you wanted to be shorter. If you're too short, if you were curvy, maybe, or not curvy enough. I mean, I was this tiny stick, and at 17, I maybe still looked like I was 12. So I was really kind of insecure about some of that, right? I think all teens, and sometimes even as a grown woman, I can have those same emotions. I call it my eighth grade self show up, where I can still feel, decades later, sometimes still hyper self aware about, oh, am I wearing the right thing? How do I look? How do I sound? Do I fit in? Do I belong? Like those are some core things. And so I was this bright, zesty, I was always an inclusive personality. I've always had friends of all walks of life, but I was definitely pretty insecure and navigating those insecurities, right? And not to say they still can show up. It's just more so I've had a lot more time to practice the confidence muscles and the habits that lead into that. But yeah, when I think about her, I'm so proud of her. I think I wish I would have been a lot kinder to myself. I think we all can relate to that, right? When you think back to your younger self, like what would you have said to 25-year-old Justin that, living in your in-laws loft and things
Hmm.
like that, let alone your 12-year-old self or 17-year-old self. But I mean, I was a combination of bright and insecure, right? Like just zesty for life and fun and playful, but also, the insecurities were there for sure.
How walk us through your personal development journey? Because one thing about you is every time I see you, which let's say a few months pass in between, you're always a different person. You've always like gone to a new level. You're always
Mhm.
leveling up. And that doesn't happen on accident. That happens on purpose and by design. So walk us through your introduction to personal development, how it's affected your life, and the role that it's played and what you're doing in personal development to continue to this level up process to go from that, 17-year-old zesty but maybe insecure gal to the person that you are now.
Well, intuitively, and I just believe in speaking to that, is that, God is a big part of my life. And when you seek God and you spend time with God, you're going to hang out in growth because God and growth go hand in hand, And so I don't mean that from any religious necessarily standpoint, but that's just true spiritual growth and personal growth. Is if you want God's best for you. I remember reading a quote years and years ago that said, if you want God's best for you, don't plan on being in your comfort zone very long. Right. So some of it was was not raised in a personal development home. I was raised in a beautiful home and great things and so forth. But really, personal development started for me consciously. Originally I was going to be a special needs teacher and I worked in a few classrooms here in Utah. I was going to school at the University of Utah and happened to meet someone on a double date whose dad had a training development company. And within a few months, like it was one of those intersections and meeting her, and I was really curious about it. I always had this like passion for teaching. I just thought I was going to be a traditional educator in a child's classroom. And I met this woman's dad owned this company and went to work for them within a few months of that meeting and really started becoming aware more of concepts and ideas. And then I got my hands on The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? Stephen Covey, classic. If you've never read that, if you're listening, add it to your must read list for 2024 because it's one book I do go back to once a year, every year, because it's so foundational. Like, think about how much Covey influenced personal development, right? Like Jim Rohn and John
Mhm.
Maxwell, your dear friend and mentor, and Wayne Dyer and Jack Canfield, some of these greats that really were foundational part of the personal development movement that it's become today. And then, yeah, you want to say
Yeah,
anything to
I just
that?
want to
But
say
that's
Covey
where it
was
started.
instrumental in my journey too. He was
Yeah.
absolutely, I mean, foundational. Reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was one of those times of like, kept me in the game, kept me moving forward. So Covey, to your point, and that book specifically that is a once a year must read.
Must read. There's a few that, I'd put your book in that category too, legit, because it's principle based. So it's not technique based, it's principle, and you can build your life. Principles are like when we're counseled to build upon the rock. Principles are universal, they're eternal. And so when you think of it in that way, and so Covey's work really was influencing me. And I wrote in my little journal long before I knew about manifesting and long before I created my own journal that came out here recently. I wrote in my little journal, I wanted to work for Franklin Covey.
Hmm.
And within 3 months of that journal writing, maybe even less than 3 months, I was working for Franklin Covey Coaching, which was part owned by Covey and part owned by a company out of Chicago. And I started selling over the phone, straight commission sales, right? I went from this, like, I'm going to have a very safe, secure path as a school teacher to, hey, straight commission, right? Like you only make a paycheck if you're closing deals, working with, in the beginning, very cold leads, and then doing some, creating some sales and having some success. But I was selling coaching programs over the phone beginning in the early 2000s, almost 20 years ago. And so I went to work for the brand Franklin Covey Coaching. And during that time, Justin, I read my first, heard of Seven Habits. I'd been reading some of that, but I read the books As a Man Thinketh by James Allen and Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Also, again, huge classics, even way before Covey, that probably influenced Covey to write what he wrote. But just the power of our mind and the power of our thoughts. And that was really, quote, kind of new for me. Again, I was in my early 20s. And so reading these books, I had my first life coach. And in 1 year, I was about 24, 5 years old. I went on to make six figures in 1 year. Prior to that, I'd only made about $30,000. And my first full year, I did like 117. And that was life changing as a woman, especially in Utah, right? At 25 years old, making a six-figure income. And six figures is still respectable. But even then, and again, as a female in my mid 20s, that was a really big stretch. But the stretch came because I had started changing my brain and started influencing my thoughts, as well as learning how to sell, right? Like I didn't just magically appear like money on mushrooms, like showed up like, hey, I just manifested this money in the woods. Like I did learn and develop and practice a skill of how to sell and how to connect and how to help people look at their pain and their challenges and look at their dreams and make decisions and commitments to move forward. And then ultimately at that time I was selling coaching and they could work with a coach for a period of time. And so that was instrumental in my own personal growth, is reading and listening, being mentored, but also applying. I literally could see my sales week directly follow my mindset. If I even entertained a thought, you've probably done it. I know I've done it, but like I'd have I'd call these leads, set appointments, things like that. Well, there'd be a day or so where I'm like, gosh, I'd even think the thought, I hope my 4 o'clock appointment doesn't hold so I can leave early. I'm tired. Lo and behold, my 4 o'clock appointment would no show or send me an email, I need to reschedule, right? And the power of your mind and the power of your thoughts and just realizing how much like we're actually influencing. Now, I'm not saying you can directly control other people, like, Jedi mind them, but our intention, right? And you and I are such big believers, and your book talks a lot about this around intention and creation go hand in hand. And so your mind is a creation machine. And so that was really the beginning of my personal development journey. And then since then, I've read lots of books and coaching programs, but then just real life application and seeing how my own limitations, one of my favorite personal development books I came across in the last 10 plus years or so or less has been a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And he's talking in that material how we all have an upper limit, which we might call our comfort zone, and how we often sometimes will self-sabotage, right? We're making progress or challenge it or change. And then we sometimes unplug our own lamp. It's like, how good can you stand it? And so what every one of you listening, you already know how to struggle. Every one of you listening's already been through adversity, struggle, challenges, getting by paycheck to paycheck or month to month or yo-yoing with your weight. I mean, all of you already know that. What not every human is accustomed to and needs to be conditioned, just like you would to run a marathon, is not everyone listening's been conditioned for prosperity or for thriving. I think the important thing is that I got to learn for myself and others is not everyone is conditioned to thrive or to receive the thing they want. Like for some people, as much as they might put it on their vision board or write it down and say, I want to double my sales or my income, or I want to be healthy and fit and super hot, or I want to attract the love of my life or get promoted in my company. Some people, they're not conditioned. They don't have like the muscle, the capacity to receive the very thing they want because it's not part of yet their identity.
Sister, we talk such a similar language. We were talking about this before we started, that there's like some of these success principles you learn and you're like, as you go on a journey, like on my journey, and there's some of these success principles you learn as you go on your journey. And then we meet at the, these rendezvous points, and we look back, we're like, it's a similar success principle journey. I want you to talk about, so you wrote a journal. It's called the My Creation Journal, by the way. Just freaking money for those of you watching on on the video. It's just so good. But it's a guide to manifesting your dreams. And here's what I love about what you do. I think the manifesting world can sometimes feel a little bit, I don't know, just a little foo-foo for some of us,
Yeah,
right?
we're
We're just
very,
like, I
very
can't
woo-woo.
quite get there, right? And meaning we come from the school of hard work and of like, like getting it done versus like, just think about it a lot. And I'm exaggerating the point to make the point. But then there's the flip side of you can work your little butt off and never, to your point, never learn how to accept some of the stuff into your life and never learn how to actually cast out a vision and start to create gratitude and start to make things happen. One of the things I think you have a real gift at is taking the true kind of like spiritual principle and then making it practical for us to be able to do today. And so walk us through this book, because to me, the journal does this. It does this in steps. It does this like in logical, practical steps for you to, like for example, vision. I teach vision in my book. Vision can be one of those ones sometimes people are like, it's a little too ethereal for me. It's a little too out there for me. Like I am trying to pay some bills, trying to raise a family, trying to keep the ship afloat. And you're talking about having a huge vision. So walk us through gratitude and vision and action steps and the things that you teach to be able to help us to make things that are right now not real become real first in our mind or spiritually, and then make them go real in our life, where we actually can create things in our life.
Well, you just in essence quoted Stephen Covey again, where he teaches all things are created twice, first spiritually or mentally, and second physically. And so a lot of this, as I'm saying, is how do you condition yourself to receive what you desire? And it begins, and it really is. So the journal that's just come out, My Creation Journal, is a hybrid or an intersection and a recipe of vision plus gratitude plus inspired action, right? Is thinking about, because it is all of those things. And to your point, like in your book, you're teaching, it's like vision, and the more clear you are. And so part of the journal, the first few pages has some space where you can write out your vision and what you're working on, what you desire in your home life, in your business, in your income, in your health and wellness and travel, play and fun and contribution and giving back and spirituality. But you getting clear on what do you really want? What do you desire, right? And the more that you're clear in owning those desires, the more powerful that is to align to them. And then there's daily practice pages where you list what you're grateful for, right? Gratitude is a great primer for manifestation. It's a great anchor. Gratitude is a rock in my life, right? We can build again upon true principles. And so practicing that no matter what's happening circumstantially is here's what I'm feeling grateful for. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And gratitude journaling is not a new concept. But when I was building out this journal, I just knew it was more than, quote, just a gratitude journal. Is that it was, I had been practicing in my own regular journal before I created this one, the combination daily of I'd list my gratitudes. And then about the last third of the page, I would write down some core affirmations, right? And affirmations is also one way that you start to influence your identity, influence who you see yourself to be, influence what you want to focus on. And so I would write certain things I was manifesting, and I am working out today or every day, and I am healthy and strong, and I am, attracting 2 new clients, or I am, confident, if that's up for us, right? Is whatever it might be, or I am attracting the love of my life, or I'm nourishing my spouse and kids. And I was just affirming what I wanted to be about in the world, manifesting or reinforcing, right? Because some of the things you have in your life, You want to nourish and water them, right? What we water grows and what we ignore atrophies. And so it's one of those things, sometimes quote those manifestations, or the manifestation section is not just about new, it's what I want to reinforce. And then dropping in and asking yourself, what's one action I can take today? And then honoring what comes up for you. And so this is one tool in the toolbox of how do we help intentionally move the needle with what we desire? How do I help myself be more likely to become the kind of person I want to be, therefore attract the kind of results I want to attract? But meeting, to your point, is that sometimes we just think manifesting is just thinking positive thoughts. Manifesting is a very active process
Yeah.
too, of like creation. And that's why, again, it's called my creation journal versus my manifesting journal. It's you're in a creation principles. And so anytime any one of you, whether you have this journal or not, you're actively focusing on intention. Who do I want to be? Where am I going? How do I want to show up? How do I want to feel? What are the ways that I'm going to choose to be in the world, is a really powerful practice of bringing you back to intention.
You, as you talk about these, how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be?
Hmm.
How, what am I looking to attract in my life? All of these, to me, to the point that you made at the end, they're all where you're living an intentional life. Talk to us about setting intention, because I think oftentimes a lot of us, we live kind of in a world of reaction to distraction versus a world of intentional creation. How do you teach people how to leave that world of reaction to all the distractions of life, and also, you live and you breathe and you die,
Yeah.
to say, you know what? No, you're here to create things, right? You're here
Hmm.
to take some time to express gratitude, to feel the emotions of the ups and the downs, and to go create and cast out. You're setting high intention to say, this is how I'm going to feel, versus I'm going to react to how everyone treats me, for example, right? How do you teach people to create intentionally and to show up with high intention?
Yeah. I love this question. And one of the things you shared recently with my gratitude series community, and you and I just jive on this, is if you're listening to this, you probably are already into some degree of personal development. And what I'm about to say won't be new for you, but what I'm asking you to look at is how tight is it and how fresh is it? Is do you have a morning ritual? What's your morning routine? The way you start your day shapes your day. You're such a big believer and teacher, and you live this. And we already know that. That's what sometimes the thing about listening to anything like this or other books or podcasts is really asking yourself, but am I living it? Because sometimes the brain goes, yeah, I know that. I need a vision. I need a gratitude. Yep. I need a morning routine. Uh-huh. I need to like read and listen to good things. But really, it's the way you start your day shapes your day. And it's one of the most powerful things. I think of a morning ritual like the rudder of a ship, right? And it's going to steer the ship, it's going to steer the day. It's not to say you can't recover, of course, but that's one of the most powerful ways that you are taking back your power or stepping into your power, is having your day start with you and things that nourish you. And that's the discernment I like to ask, is what nourishes you, mind, body, heart, and spirit. Because too many people start their day on their cell phone, their smartphone, right? And one of the biggest, you mentioned the word distraction. That's why I'm going there. One of the biggest distractions and deceitful lies is, I'm going to check it, my phone just real quick. The real quick is the big fat lie,
That's right.
right? Because you're like, oh, you see, I have new text messages, I have new
Yes.
emails, I have notifications. Let me just check all of this. And then half an hour, 40 minutes goes by. But imagine everything truly is energy. So imagine as if you check your text and say there's 5 or 6 texts. Imagine you're laying, many people are still laying in bed. Some are naked, some are in pajamas. What you wear to bed is your business. But many people are in their bedroom, which I think we'd all agree, your bedroom's pretty intimate space. Many people haven't even gotten out of bed and they're looking at 5 or 6 texts. Well, imagine those 5 or 6 people just walked into your bedroom first thing in the morning.
Hmm.
And then you check your email real quick, and maybe there's 13 or 23 new emails. And even if you're not opening them, but you're just scrolling through the email to see which ones you want to read, or, ooh, or this or that, imagine those 23 people too just joined your bedroom. And then you'll just check Instagram real quick. Again, the lie, real quick. You check Instagram, you scroll your phone, look through some stories, and maybe saw 25 different things. Even if they're nanoseconds of scrolling, you're making split decisions to decide, you're opening enough energy. And then because we checked Instagram, we got to check Facebook. And so many people, before they even get out of bed, they have 75 people's energy in their bedroom. And while I follow a lot of positive people like you too, and often there's positive in that, the reality is that I also don't know, and it's other people's agenda. And immediately I might start my day in comparison, or I might start my day feeling upset about some world events and feeling really anxious, which again, the issue is not do we want to check those things and be engaged and involved? Yes. But first thing, when your brain is just barely kind of coming into the day, you want to give your energy there? No, you don't. And so it's having that boundary about, hey, I start my day with me. A great mentor of mine said, meet with God, Tiff, before you meet with the world. And even if you might say God, source, universe, I say God, but I want to be in prayer and meditation, reading something nourishing, hope and positivity, getting in my creation journal, gratitude listing, meditating, or getting up and going for a workout. But again, the discernment is what nourishes you. And you start your day with nourishment versus, quote, empty calories. That's a big way to be intentional, as you know, because you live this. But any one of you listening, you've already heard about morning routines and power hours before. It's not new content. My ask of you in this moment is, am I living it sharply? Is it fresh? Or is it, yeah, I kind of flirt with it, but it's just like your diet and exercise. If you kind of flirt with it, but you won't really see the result from it.
Tiff, the way I look at this is every influence has influence.
Mm,
And the way that you're hitting me is like every energy has energy. And this concept of letting them into your most intimate space, in this case, into your room, or letting them into your mind, maybe even a more intimate space, right? Of like the what we water in our mind grows. And that is such a powerful way to look at it. That concept of letting them into your personal energy. You're we
yeah,
talked about at the start,
your
you're a
field.
high vibe person. And part of that is not on accident, my friends.
Yeah.
Part of that is that she guards that energy or that influence, and every influence has influence. Every energy has more energy, and she guards that in such a unique way. I want to shift gears with you on into confidence. We can maybe even call confidence self-worth. To me, you are a master at unpacking this and helping people to step into their confidence and to find and amplify their self-worth. Amy Cuddy wrote a book. She's a Harvard professor. She wrote a book called Presence. So, Tiff, imagine you walk into a room. You've seen people do this. You have this. You walk into a room, and there's someone that you, from across the room, you say, I don't know what it is about her, or I don't know what it is about him, but they have presence, right? They have a presence about them. And her whole study was, is that something that they were just born with, or is it something that you could actually build over time? You could build your own presence. Anyway, they showed stick figures to elementary age kids, and the stick figures, if you can imagine, had they like build them down to where they had slumped shoulders. It's a stick figure of a human, right? Of a person. They had like a head down, shoulders down, legs close together, hands in their lap, kind of in a down position. And they said, is this person happy or sad? And the kid said, sad. And they said, okay, cool. And then they showed another stick figure. The stick figure was like arms up, like they had won a race, and legs spread, super strong. And they goes, is this person happy or sad? Happy. And then here's what's interesting, Tiff. They said, is the one that's kind of down and subservient and shoulders down and chin down and head down and legs together and arms folded or hands down in the lap, is that a boy or a girl? And overwhelming, the little kid said, that's a little girl. And then the one that was super strong and super, but that's a boy. So I think sometimes even inherently, women possibly struggle more than men, and men struggle too, for sure, but with just
Right.
confidence and just self-worth.
Yeah.
So can you unpack that for us
Oh,
and
yeah.
share with us ways and things that we can do to step into our self-worth at a higher level, to step into our confidence and show up, as our better version of ourselves?
I love this because I do think, again, a lot of it just has to do, and we're changing the narrative here and we're changing the tide in a lot of like the way you and Missy are parenting and very conscious, right, with your children and daughters. And I love seeing your social media over the weekend, just cheering on your nieces, and how lucky are they to have you in their life. And so we are influencing this differently. But when we think about the shoulders that all women stand on, their mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers. Women were conditioned very much so to fit in, fitting in and belonging. Where like a boy could be like on this football field or soccer field and make a goal and be like, yeah, look at me. Where women were really conditioned heavily, not all, right? But many women were conditioned to fit in at all costs. right? And not take up too much space and look pretty. Don't say anything, be mindful, speak less, be polite, and it's like, it's really fascinating. And so we could be here for hours unpacking this, but foundationally is just realizing that even from a biochemistry level, right? Like your reptilian brain, for survival, women had to quote fit in and belong to the tribe, or they would literally be left to starve and die. And so you think about that, right? Now we're lots of, ancestry away from that level of tribal living. However, energetically. So for women, especially, for instance, the fear of not being liked. Men have that too. But for women, that can be really, really high is, am I liked? Am I approved of, included? I don't want to ruffle feathers. I want to be polite. Again, politeness and getting along in harmony, which there's nothing, quote, wrong in those things inherently, right? Like I also like being a polite, kind woman. And in the same breath, it's like being in ownership of your gifts and your voice and having self confidence is one of those key. It's a muscle, though. And that is what I think is so empowering, is realizing that confidence is a choice and it's also a habit. And so, even if you weren't raised in the most affirmed home of being a female or being a woman, that you absolutely can make a choice in this moment to say, I'm going to choose to develop the habits of self confidence. But it's not like, your eye color or your height, you're born with, you have it or you don't have it. There's certain thought patterns and there's certain actions and habits that you can be reinforcing that will strengthen that confidence. But just realizing, if you're listening to this as well and you relate to that, or the women in your life, is that it's very common. It's women hire me to grow their business, and 80% of what we work on is related to self-worth, self-care, self-love, having boundaries for self, taking care of themselves. Most women are taught to take care of everyone else first, to people please heavily. Like, again, it's like, I want to be liked and loved, and this is my purpose and so forth. And so helping women take better care of themselves and having healthier boundaries, and boundaries can be an interesting word, but really it's about self-integrity. When I think about the word boundaries, is, do I honor my word to myself? Or do I easily like push off my needs, my workouts, my things and desires to make sure everyone else's stuff, or this thing came in that someone else wants me to do? And so again, we could be here for quite some time, but it's understanding that a lot of this comes from lineage, meaning ancestral, being passed down. And many of you listening are already making major changes, and you are creating a different outcome where it's a much healthier experience for girls and teens and young women being raised today, of opportunities and options and things. But for men and women, again, there are habits that you build or that you work on to grow that self-confidence. It's a muscle.
Yeah. So confidence is a choice and confidence is a habit. I've never heard it taught that way. And that is so profound. Confidence is a choice. I think I've heard that concept, right? That you can say, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to show up with some energy. Confidence is a habit. Aristotle says he says, excellence is not an act, it's a habit. Therefore, we are what we repeatedly do. Can you unpack for us, what can we repeatedly do? What are some of the habits that we can install to start showing up with more confidence, to start building that foundational belief in ourselves?
Yeah. And we'll talk about these as tools in the toolbox, because there's several. It's like ingredients, like, the Tony Robbins quote that success leaves clues. But, some of the things like we were just talking about is starting your day with yourself versus instantly in mom mode or responding to your texts or work things, and starting your day doing things that nourish you. And again, whether that's reading or moving your body or some kind of, spiritual nourishment, but that you choose to say, I prioritize me, is one of those self-confidence building habits. I prioritize me and my preferences. This also requires you to take time to get to know yourself. I love the word intimacy. We often hear the word intimacy and we usually think, emotional or sexual intimacy with someone else in our sweethearts or partners, which that's true as well. But intimacy, when you look at the word, is into me, I see, is you
Hmm.
look at self relationship. Your relationship with you, male or female, sets the tone for every other relationship that you have. And so think about some of the habits you do on a regular basis and how they build you up. right? Our choices can either be building us up or bringing us down. And so when you think about getting to know yourself and your preferences, like I've asked already the question, what nourishes you? But doing things that invest in you. Again, your morning ritual. I'm a big believer of fitness, and moving your body on a regular basis is a great confidence booster, at least both physically, and your serotonin and your levels will improve where you'll physically feel better. And feeling better is part of feeling more confident, right? What you're
So as I think
focusing
of
on.
my girls, like right now I have my daughters are 14 and 16, like at the time of this of our discussion. 14 and 16, ninth graders, junior, right? In high
Mhm.
school. They're both on the drill team, so their dance team. They work super hard, and I always tell them. I was texting them this week, and my one daughter took fifth in the solos, and my other daughter took first, and then their team took fourth and fifth in the overalls. And I was texting him, and I said, I'm all about winning. I said, first of all, I'm all about winning, so I'm not going to say winning's not important. I'm all about showing up and winning.
Excellent.
I I said, but I'm less concerned whether you take first or second or third or fourth or first or fifth. I don't actually care specifically about the placement. I care about going back to a cubbyism, all the private victory stuff. I watch my girls put in all the private victory work because in the private victories is where you start to build. It's one of those habits that can start to build the confidence, right? You're paying the price in private, and as Cubby said, you're celebrated oftentimes in public for what you do in private. Walk us through this idea of into me I see, that intimacy, into me I see, and how do you use that to for you specifically, and then also like what would you teach my little girls, right? These 14-year-old and 16-year-old young ladies, for them to say, hey, listen, because to me it's things like honoring your word. Like what are those things those habits you would have them start building right now as these young women to create that into me I see, that intimacy with themselves?
So several, right? Like we've been talking about, but even the things like in their case, like their schoolwork, right? And like, hey, showing up for themselves. But a lot of this has to do too, the habit of self-talk. Like what's the messaging you're giving yourself? And I would invite your girls and any woman listening and any man listening to be mindful of the words you speak to yourself. The words you speak, as the poet Hafiz has said, the words you speak becomes the house you live in.
Mm,
And so the power of your words and the power of your thoughts, you're also feeling what you're thinking. So if you're not feeling very confident, you're probably thinking thoughts that are more, you're hard on yourself. You're like, oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. Or gosh, I this or I that. Or I've like, blah, 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 or put on 10 pounds or whatever your things might be. And so being mindful of that self-talk, and some of that is being very intentional. I teach in my coaching process, one of the self-care habits is the mirror work. And the mirror work concept is, and Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and others have taught this over the years. I learned it from Jack Canfield years ago when I was mentoring with him, is eye to eye in the mirror. You affirm yourself, you acknowledge your wins and victories, what is going well, seeing yourself, appreciating yourself. And then some core affirmations like, I see you, you are enough, I believe in you, you have what it takes. You are so smart. You're so competent. You're so beautiful. You're so talented. You have such a great heart, but speaking kind things to yourself. And then as you wrap that mirror work as your eye to eye in the mirror, it's, I love you, or I believe in you. Now, for some of you hearing this, you might say, whoa, that sounds cheesy. That sounds awkward. No, what it is intimacy. And that's
it-
why some people, we avoid it, just like some people avoid intimacy with another person or their partner, or they, oh, I'm, this or I'm that, is they're avoiding intimacy because there's a degree of vulnerability in intimacy. And so when you are eye to eye, and even though you're like, oh, that's awkward or that's weird, no, it's just simply intimate and vulnerable. But when some of the people, women I'm coaching, when they do this the first time, some laugh and giggle, some feel nothing, many of them will cry. Because many times in they have been in front of a mirror every day of their life, doing their makeup, putting on this red lipstick, or doing their hair, or if a man, shaving or whatever, it's like how often do you see yourself and then affirm yourself? And the self-talk, and especially grown women listening, or even your teenage girls, is give yourself the love you wish someone else would give you.
Totally.
All of you are craving love from someone, whether it was a mother, a father, a coach, a partner, the ex that left you or broke your heart, or from your child or children, or from your boss. We all thrive with feeling seen and valued. So give that to yourself. is one of the most potent ways that you build this bridge of self-worth and self-esteem is I show up for you, Tiff. And the gift of that, Justin, is that, and again, this is a work in progress, but I regularly practice. That's what I'm a big fan of the journal is we're practicing gratitude, practicing vision. And now we're practicing again. This is where it's a habit of self-confidence is I practice showing up more for me is giving myself the love that I want, the affirmation, the validation. So I don't show up so starved to my marriage, to my relationships, my friendships, and then I might be in an energy of like, hey, give me,
Yeah.
fill me up, versus I'm going to show up for you, Tiff, or any one of you listening, fill in your own name. You show up for you and you choose to affirm you, see yourself, love yourself, speak into yourself. And that's, again, we're talking about, well, you can work out, you start your day a certain way, certain habits, but foundationally is the self-talk. Is this real estate between your ears is your most valuable real estate, and it's being intentional, back to our key word, with what goes on there. I can see you've wanted to share a few things because I want to hear what you had to say.
No, I besides saying amen to everything you said, let me say this. For those of you, and again, maybe I come from this bend of like, oh my gosh, look myself in the mirror and have this conversation. Okay, all right, let me say this. Don't you guys think it's interesting? And Tiff, let me ask you this question. So Taylor Swift, who by the way, I got nothing but props for greatness. This gal's great at what she does. I'm all about it. A professional athlete, I'm all about it. Professional entertainer, go pay your money and go cheer them on. I'm all about it. But we'll go to a sports game. You'll paint your face red or blue or green or whatever the color of the team is. You'll cheer like crazy. You'll spend money. You'll go early in the morning and stay all day and come home late, sleep overnight, spend hundreds or thousands or in some cases tens of thousands of dollars to go have this experience. And you will cheer them on till your voice is hoarse, right? But when it comes to your own dreams, your own goals, your own future, your own family, you're too cool and it's too weird, and I wouldn't quite look myself in the mirror and be my own best cheerleader, but I'll go cheer for everyone else, like crazy, the football team.
Yeah, you wear someone else's name on your back. But how about having
be
your
your
back?
own biggest cheerleader,
Right,
right?
have your own back and like, hey, I'm cheering for me. And again, why most people, if there is, for some people, they just love it. They fall in love with the mirror work. And this is just one, again, when we're asking for practical tools, because everyone listening goes, yeah, I get the direct correlation that my confidence is directly influencing my sales and income. My confidence when I'm coaching women about dating, right? Your confidence is everything to the man you attract and to what you create in a marriage or in a long-term relationship is your own sense of self-confidence. When a woman doesn't have much self-confidence, she'll put up with breadcrumbs. And
That's
trust
right.
me, breadcrumbs, you will starve with breadcrumbs. You won't be full in a relationship. You just won't.
So
But
good.
you've got to start filling yourself. And so when people, again, most people can understand the concept. Self-confidence is the foundation of everything I'm attracting or repelling. But this is one exercise of takeaway of the tool of how you start to see things shift is how do you show up for yourself and like I had a client here, she's the top realtor. She's a top kick butt realtor in her world. And she was here on Friday, a few days ago at the time of this recording for her VIP day, for a coaching strategy day, 4 hours at my home. We work on some various things. And this one's a rock star. I mean, she has decades in the real estate industry. And when we got real honest about some things, so again, we're talking about sales and let's grow sales and grow her agent team and all of this, even though it's a challenging time in real estate and mortgages, or there's at least an influence there. There's also a lot of opportunity. But I said, Sue, let's look at this. She's struggling to, again, I'd call honor your boundaries or be in integrity with taking better care of herself. She does it sometimes, but she's not consistent.
Yeah.
And I said, do you truly think you're ready to attract a new powerhouse agent if you're already energetically feeling pretty worn out? And the biggest issue is you don't trust yourself to manifest that. Every one of you listening, it's worth looking at, do I actually trust myself with what I currently have? Because if you're already worn out, tapped out, exhausted, you people please, you blow off your workouts, you blow off your morning ritual, you blow off your self-care fuel nourishment because, well, I got to respond to this call or take care of so-and-so and do these things. Do you truly think foundationally you are ready to receive that new thing? No, you're not, because you're not in integrity. Is you already have intuition that says, so actually the attracting the very thing you think you want, actually subconsciously feels like more exhaustion and burnout because there's no boundaries. And it was this huge, she could have said, I mean, this woman's older than myself. And she's like, I've hired and worked with so many coaches over the years. Again, she has a rock star, multiple figure, business every year that she's earning. And she was like, no one has ever said that to me in that way. Is yeah, you don't trust yourself. Is manifesting more? Where's it going to fit in your life? If you're already tapped out, if you're not honoring yourself, part of the way how you manifest so much, Justin, is you have tight boundaries with your fitness and your self-care. Amen. Is that true or not?
Yeah, for sure.
You have
Absolutely.
very tight boundaries where like you are going to take care of yourself and then you can show up for Missy and your kids and you can show up for these teams you've led over the years and influence millions of just so much of people and all the work you're doing in the world is because you show up for you and you're integrous with yourself. Now, it doesn't mean any of us are perfect at it, but you have tight boundaries.
Woo, girl, that is so good. Let's end with this last one, last kind
Yeah.
of key subject, which is
I know
motivation.
this
So
is where we get, like you said, things can kind of be like, there's so much love and empathy, but there's also like, we got to tell the truth. And the truth is, if you regularly cancel on you, you regularly push off you for everyone else, you're not ready to manifest the next thing you want.
no, your again, this to me is actually one of your giftings, which is your empathy. And it's not just the way that the words that you say or the way that you listen. It's literally like the vibration you give out. And I don't mean that in like a foo-foo way. Like literally, I can feel your empathy. You and I were on the phone, and I had some just crazy things happening in my world from a business perspective. And you were and I were on the phone. You took the time to call, which is empathy, right? Sympathy would be I feel bad for you. Empathy is I'll walk with this. I'll walk with you on this journey.
Yeah.
And you said to me on the phone, we were walking through, and you said, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, trust the redirect. And it was such an empathetic way to do it, to say it. I could feel your empathy. But then it also was like it was the strength that I needed, right? Trust the redirect. Trust that God's in the details of your life. Trust that God's paying attention to what's going on. Trust that this next step's bigger than the last step. It's all that's giving strength too. That's not just like, oh man, let's just sit here and cry together. That's also saying, yo, bro, you got big things to do. This is your gift. Like this, at least one of them, right? Is this incredible empathy that you have to love and care, and then at the same time, this incredible ability to articulate the truth to people that can be a little bit of kick in the butt, possibly, but it's the kick in the butt they need. It's the redirect that they need, And so I just honor that and love that about you. Let me hit you with this. Talk to me about motivation. How do you stay motivated? How do you train someone that says, you know what, I'm lacking some motivation. I'm either burned out or I'm worn out or, I'm not getting started. In other words, I know what to do. We talked about this already. I've kind of heard all the read and listen and do morning routines, and I'm not doing it, right? Kind of give us the empathetic kick in the butt we need to get motivated, get going, to unpack motivation for us, how you teach and how you stay motivated in your life and how you teach your clients to do the same thing.
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. And I just appreciate being here with you. I'm so proud of you in this podcast. More people need you in their ears. My community just loves you. I adore you. You're one of the greats. You really are. And I so love that conversation we had because I had like fire in my lungs. Because I also was feeling a little mama bearish where I was like, listen, with the things you've been navigating, I was like, ooh, I want to get a hold of them. Like I have that energy up. But also reminding you of the power of that. So when we talk about motivation, for me, um, again, faith is a really big part of my life. And I respect however people connect to this, but whether you call it your higher power or higher purpose, I think we'd all agree that, say, love, kindness, service, these are attributes, whether you're Buddhist or you're Christian or religious or not, or whatever, even if you're not sure what you believe, right? I think we could agree that, like, okay. And so for me, coming home to purpose and coming home to God is a core source of motivation. Is you have purpose. If you're listening to this, my love, like here's the truth is like your life has great purpose because you're here. And even if you're feeling lost in the woods or discouraged, that's okay. That's human. or you're feeling on top of the world. It's like we all have peaks and valleys. I do, Justin does, we all do. And I think we come home to our roots, right? Like what nourishes your roots? For me, faith is a big part of that. And then expanding my faith of, yes, not just hope for me, like I'm going to be okay and life is okay for me and God has my back. It's also about expansion of, I want to be a positive source of good in the planet. And that motivates me, right? Like the vision. So, like we say, come home to your vision of who can I be a blessing to, especially when your life is in, we'll just say, a challenging space. Thinking that thought, like, who can I bless today, will literally become soul salve for you, navigating that. And that, again, like how we show up to serve and love and sow seeds in our time of need as well. And then, like we've mentioned, some of the ways I start my day, reading or listening to shows like this, doing things, surrounding yourself. If you need to be motivated, for sure, make sure you're following Justin Prince on every platform. He helps me. He's part of it. Like, the power of association. I mean that sincerely, not just being cute because I'm on your show, but like who you follow. And some of you might need to do some cleaning of house, who you follow or who you're connected to, or be more intentional about who you spend more time around or who is in your feed. But come home to vision and purpose as your bedrock, like what you're about, what you want to be about. And even if you're not sure, you might be in between careers or you're not quite sure in between, like, am I staying or going in a relationship and I'm stressed about this, or things are really up for me in my finances, whatever you're feeling is like, come home to true principles, come home to God, come home to vision, come home to service, come home to gratitude, right? When I'm feeling grateful, I have naturally more of a glow. I'm more like in that space of I want to help more people. And therefore, when I help more people, I'm really about God's business. And then you can't outgive God. So when you're in the business of giving and growth, like it just keeps magnifying. But I get to practice these things too. I want to make sure I'm also clear that there are definite moments like I feel sadness and I feel discouragement and I feel like, man, the negative thoughts or discouraged, or I just feel frustrated or things aren't working out the way I want them to, at least yet. I've navigated and still navigating those things. And that's why I love you asking this question, is come back to your tools in the toolbox of the things you're reading, listening to, your prayer life, your meditation practice, get on the mat, get on the bike, doing the things that will help support you. Whatever your goals might be for this year, I love talking about goals and vision and new year and all that energy. Whatever your goals might be, everyone listening, you will all need energy to achieve them. And that's what you're asking, is motivation. I would also call that energy. And so that you're rich, you're energy rich with the things that fill you up. So, my friend, thank
I
you for having me.
Tiff, I love that redirect from motivation to energy, because when your energy's, and this is what you've been covering the whole podcast, by the way, but is when your energy's low, God, you don't show up as your best self. When your energy is low, when you're not in integrity with yourself, then, and if your energy is your motivation, that like pep in your step, that shoulders back, chin up, and that is one of those great things that you have, is this really unique energy or vibration, right? And it's a unique motivation that you have to go out there and have vision, have purpose, take action. And my friends, those are three key words I want you to, just as we leave this today, right? As we're wrapping up: vision, purpose, action. What is my vision? What is my purpose? Align that with your values and the things that really matter to you. And then what I love that Tiffany is so good at is get into action. Like, what's your next physical step? What's the next step? And that's why I love the creation journal. That's really what it's teaching you, is have some vision. Remember your purpose. That's your gratitude for your purpose. That's your motivation, right? And then lastly is take action. So Tiff, you're one of the best. And I just love you and I appreciate you and I respect you. I know they can go to tiffanyspeaks.com to learn more about you. I know they can follow you all throughout social as Tiffany Peterson. They can go to Amazon. They can go to, wherever they're getting their journals. They can go get the My Creation Journal. But I want them to go get connected with you. There's an old hymn that says, each life that touches ours for good. You are a life that touches people's lives for good. Like they're better because they knew you. They're better because you came. So I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you a ton. Thanks so much for coming on with us and sharing your wisdom and your perspective.